here's another variety that is talking of native varieties, which a lot of the older people in our area that remember going into caves in the 40s and so forth, they tell stories of finding old remnants of corn varieties in the caves in the Ozarks. But this is one that was the Osage people that used to inhabit Missouri and throughout Illinois and various regions around us in Missouri used to grow this beautiful brown, chocolate brown corn. And it's pretty much disappeared. It's one we're trying to revive and get back into this year's catalog. And it was probably growing right in the valley where we live. There's lots of remnants of old Osage encampments, mostly just chips. But you could tell they did a lot of work there and probably gardening there. And then after them, the people that lived there before us for the last 175 years were also gardening in the valley because it's a fertile plain. So it's probably a lot of pieces of digging tools and things like that we're finding. But the corn is amazing, brown color, you know. Talking of interesting corn, this is one of the oldest corns, probably what we carry. And the strains we used to have, we got from Joseph Simcox. They were good strains, but they were meant to be grown in high altitude, like up in the Andes. They're from Peru. They're the darkest of all corns, one of the highest antioxidants of any food, maybe the highest of any food. And they make delicious cornmeal. They make them into all sorts of drinks and teas, and they grind them into baby food. And it's softer than most dry corns, which makes it easier to grind and easier to chew. And it's the most beautiful corn we know. Fortunately, the last 20-some years, there was a person that moved up from Peru that had been selecting this in the United States and now has a strain that is meant to grow in the U.S. The other strain that we've been offering was difficult to grow here. So now we're going to have a strain. Again, it shows you the importance of saving seed and seed collectors trading and sharing. Another example is the striped japonica. It's a variety that came to the U.S. from Japan in the 1880s. Japan got corn, and at the time when they got it in, like, I don't remember, about 300-400 years ago, much of the society was vegetarian, and they weren't growing corn for much for livestock feed. The people that were using livestock, corn wasn't real common. It was mostly a hobby plant, so they didn't really know what to do with it. So they figured, I guess they figured they would turn it into these beautiful striped leaves and black kernels. They just had fun with it. And Japanese are experts at making things, changing things and modifying things in a natural way so that it becomes something of beauty. And they selected this to have red, white, yellow, and green leaves. And so it's fascinating to see. It's fun traveling across the country. We see it in like Whole Foods parking lots, in city landscapes now, and throughout, just in planters here and there in front of markets. The interesting thing is about this corn, it's only multicolored with this many colors that I know, and it's also, was brought here in the 1880s. And again, pretty much lost in Japan at this point, as far as I know. And the other thing, when we first found out about this corn, which we've known, it's been, out in America for a number of years, here and there in a few catalogs. Every strain we tested, though, came back, positive for GMOs. And again, we've had a collector friend in Arkansas who passed away a number of years. And we were, really sad about that. But finally, his sister contacted us and said, could you guys like his collection? This was one of the things in his collection. When we tested his strain from the 90s, it was GMO-free. So we were able to bring it back, hopefully GMO-free. And there may be other strains out there now that are GMO-free. But as far as we know, we were searching and searching and could not find a totally GMO-free strain. So those are the kind of things that people do and keep these crops going, from generation to generation and culture to culture. How to tell if things are genetically modified is really, really hard. What we do is send it off to a laboratory for a test. So we have to send like 10,000 seeds, so it's a really comprehensive test. For a home gardener, it's really, really hard, but in general, genetic modification mostly affects corn and a little bit into sugar beets and summer squash. It also affects other crops, but most crops don't cross-pollinate like corn does. So corn is the main one that is really hard to produce because most other crops, you can work around it. There's lots of simple methods. Corn has ways to work around it too, but they're not as simple. They're more complicated methods. Here's some of the Art Combi watermelons, and these have small handles on them, and they're small melons. These are the ones next door, and ones that came up on a wild plant, and they didn't get as much care as the patch she's growing in her regular garden. But they still are amazing. So take a look at them. She's going to have some more, but her big ones weren't ripe yet. These were from the ones that came up wild from last year's harvest. So they're not like her they're not as big as her domesticated ones. I haven't tried these yet, but I've tried the other strains of Art Combi melon, and she says they taste just the same. The other strains are like a really good old-fashioned watermelon. Here's the Kaho watermelon from Japan. It was actually introduced to Japan around 1920 from China. It's one of the smallest watermelons I know, only a couple of pounds. It has you can't really see the picture here as well as you should, but it has the most bright apricot peach-colored flesh, not a whole lot of seeds, and it's the most beautiful personal-sized watermelon I've ever seen. It's the color of a Charleston gray on the outside, the shape of a Charleston gray, long and slender, but it has delicious, sweet, fruity apricot orange flesh. And originally from China to Japan, we brought it here this year, and eventually we hope to offer it. But it's it was definitely the most exciting melon in the patch out there. Unfortunately, they matured so early. They matured before the Heirloom Expo. Winged beans, another crop if you're in a warm area, it's fabulous. Sea kale, if you want a perennial kill, and especially on coastal climates, it goes on and on and on. It's from the coast of Scotland. The seeds are expensive and hard to get, but once you get it planted once, it goes on and on and on. So it's another perennial crop that you don't have to worry a whole lot about. The Nif carrot, purple carrots are one of the other things we're researching. We're researching Indian purple carrots, Turkish purple carrots, European purple carrots. Again, both of the beauty and their nutrition and amazing flavor. Here's the Pusa acida. We're hoping to have it back in a year or so. We're working on getting another seed crop. Asparagus or long beans, another crop that's getting more and more popular in America. And of course, peanuts is a crop that is getting more and more interest. There's so much diversity in peanuts, so many colors, and so little research on to the benefits of the different colors. So here was a seed collecting trip down in San Cristobal in Mexico in Chiapas. So many different bean varieties. You can see the color there, just amazing diversity in beans growing locally there. And the crops there are just fabulous, and the cultures are amazing down in that part of Mexico. We were there in Mexico in January, February, and then we were in April in Japan. And the cultures are so opposite of each other. In some ways similar, but in most ways, so opposite, but in so many ways, when it comes to food, they both care about their food and their food culture, but in so many ways, absolutely opposite, both in how they drive, one culture is excited, the other culture tends to be a little more reserved. They're excited in a reserved way, but both cultures were amazing. I don't know which one I like better. So it was an amazing experience, but it was like going from night to day in the differences. But as far as their care for food, both cultures care about, they're just like everybody. They want good, clean food. They want to be able to raise their children without worrying about what's in their food, just like everybody everywhere. I mean, I think that's what we're all want to do. There's some of the beans down in Mexico. Fabulous. These are runner beans. Fabulous colors, fabulous diversity. The JING orange okra, which is the prettiest and most tender okra I've seen. It's a Chinese variety. Fabulous, bright red orange color. Dwarf tamarillo is a crop that would grow well here. It grows well in Missouri, except it freezes back. It matures about like a tomato, but it makes fruit in about 80 days from transplant, and it grows taller and taller. It's related to the tamarillo that is sold in like Mexican grocery stores or Central American grocery stores, but it makes a tiny little fruit that's about the size of a cherry tomato with an apricot, peach-like flavor. It's tremendous in preserves and huge amounts of production. Zimbalo melon is a relative of the pepino, and if you're in an area where pepino is hard to grow, like Missouri, we do grow pepino, but it doesn't do well like coastal California. It's too hot. So this is a great substitute. It has quite a bit of the same flavor, not quite as good, but amazing for juices, amazing for fresh eating, and a beautiful fruit and a beautiful plant. The cacona is another thing we can grow successfully in Missouri. You have to start it very early and transplant it out, but it's a relative of the naranjilla from Peru. It makes a fruit that's used like a tart citrus. So if you're in an area where citrus can't be grown, or even if you can grow citrus, it has a different taste than true citrus. It's a very tart taste, makes fabulous juices and preserves. Lychee tomato, the Prime Minister of Canada had a picture in a magazine a little while ago, a year or so ago, on the lychee tomato group on Facebook, and they had a picture of him growing this. I don't know where he got the seed, but it's an extremely rare crop in the North America, but it makes a thorny plant, which some people, especially if you have children, you're going to get, as you harvest the fruit, you're going to get a few small cuts on your fingers, but the fruit are worth it. They taste like a cross between a tomato and a real cherry. It's not a real tomato, it's a relative of tomatoes, but a fabulous tasting plant. And roselle, one of the most popular plants. It goes by a lot of different names around the world, but it's one of the most popular plants for drinks and teas. Tremendous health benefits, and also one of the best tasting plants for drinks and teas. It's made into the Middle Eastern countries, Mexico, Asia. It's used very commonly for coloring, and it's used in a lot of our dried teas here in the US as well.